Welcome back. All right, so today we're going to talk about the San Jose Sharks, how the Sharks ended up missing the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs, which was not a surprise, really, right? Preseason, I don't know if anybody before the season started that was picking the Sharks to necessarily be in the playoffs. They ended up 32, 37, and 13. They had 22 regulation wins this year. And yeah, I mean they had some rough patches. They had some good ones as well though, which means that if you are of the belief that San Jose's not that far off, you could find reasons this season to look at their year and say, they had good moments here, this worked well for them, and yet at the same time, if you are of the belief they need to do a full rebuild, there's plenty of evidence that the rebuild's necessary. The key date I picked was April 7th when Doug Wilson steps down. Doug Wilson stepped away for health reasons, decided to step down altogether, and so now the search is on for a general manager, which you have to assume they'll have in place once we reach the draft. They have an interim GM, and whether or not they've hired somebody else, I would think they'll make that decision before the draft, but we'll see. Sometimes a team takes a while on that kind of thing, right? Maybe you just trust your scouts and the interim GM, and you say, you know what, go out there and draft the guys that you think are the best players available. So their overall numbers are not fantastic, but there's one that stands out to me. So their goals for 211, that's 30th, which is pretty low. Their goals against 261, which is 21st. So they allow 50 more goals than they score. It's not a recipe for success. On the power play side, they were 22nd at 19%. So 22nd in the league on the power play. So power play, goals for, goals against, all of them in the 20s or in goals for 30th. But their penalty kill was fantastic, and this seems to be a hallmark of San Jose teams. 85.2%, which was second behind only the Carolina Hurricanes, who had a ridiculously good penalty kill during the regular season. And it is one of those things that I always find myself kind of curious about, that a team can be 21st in goals against, which means your defense, your goaltending, probably not fantastic, and yet the penalty kill, where you're still relying on that defense and the goaltending, is excellent. And we've seen this in previous seasons. I remember Martin Jones in San Jose having a very good save percentage during penalty kills, one of the best in the league, even though 5-on-5, it wasn't good. So it's that continuing oddity with the San Jose Sharks that their penalty kill is pretty good. And again, if you want to look for reasons to believe this team can turn it around sooner rather than later, you can find them. That penalty kill is one of those reasons. Because if they fix up their power play, that'll mean they're scoring more. And there you go. That gets them that much closer. Now, their season started off relatively well. They won 5 out of 8 to start the season in October. They were 5-3. They were 7-6-1 in November, 5-5 in December, 5-6-2 in January, and then we get into where they're not really within realistic distance of the playoffs. Shouting distance, sure. Single digits out of the playoffs, yep, but not really likely to make it. February, they're 2-3-3, and then they fall off after the trade deadline, 5-7-2 in March, 3-7-5 in the month of April. It was a miserable month of April for them, and so it did end on a down note, and they did end up below 500, where they spent a lot of the season above 500. They had 2 notable streaks where they don't win much or at all. They lost 9 of 13 from October 24th to November 20th, and then they lost 7 in a row from January 29th to February 22nd. So and again, this is that thing, right, where if you want to look and say, well, there's reasons to believe that things can turn around, you can look at those long losing streaks and say, with the right changes, if you can avoid those craters during the season, improve your record a bit, sure, you can get into the hunt. And you could point at the LA Kings and say, well, the Kings, did they do a full rebuild? And then, yeah. Anyways, I do wonder with San Jose going forward. They've already said they're not looking at a rebuild. They want to get into the playoffs. They want to make the playoffs every year, which I think phrasing is one thing, because it's one thing to say you want to be in the playoffs every year, and it's another to say you want to be a Stanley Cup contender, Stanley Cup champion. You want to build it right. So and again, it's just wording. I know that they're not saying they don't want to be Cup contenders, but just building yourself to be a playoff team and then falling out doesn't feel great, right? So that's that fine line that you're walking right there if you're the San Jose Sharks. Now, their top producers, pretty good. Timo Meier, 77 games, 35 goals, 41 assists for 76 points. Meier was a very dangerous player during most of the season, had some excellent games in there. Tomas Hertl, who's got a long-term contract extension, 82 games, 30 goals, 34 assists, 64 points. And those long-term contracts are a huge part of the storyline with the San Jose Sharks going forward. Can you do a full-on rebuild when you've got Hertl, Carlson, and Burns all locked up long-term? Couture, 77 games, 23 goals, 33 assists, 56 points. Probably my favorite member of the Sharks, a heart and soul kind of guy. Brent Burns, I thought had a decent year. 82 games, 10 goals, 44 assists, 54 points. Barabanov, 70 games, 10 goals, 29 assists, 39 points. Not many people talked about the fact that Barabanov had a pretty good year. I mentioned it plenty in reviews. I thought he played well. And then there's the Erik Karlsson riddle, right? So a lot of the issues San Jose's got right now could be tied to that trade. The Erik Karlsson trade, if they don't make it, right now they have Josh Norris in the lineup. They have those draft picks. And they would have, honestly, I would think, a better looking future than what they have right now. But Karlsson at times this year looked like the old Erik Karlsson. The problem is he plays 50 games. So he misses 32 games, which you can kind of count on with Karlsson at this point. 10 games, or 10 goals, I should say, 25 assists, 35 points in those 50 games. So again, he's still productive. Elliot Friedman reported on the weekend that there was some discussion about trading him and that there's the possibility San Jose looks to trade him. I don't know who takes that contract. Plus, if somebody takes that contract, odds are you have to eat some of the cap hit. San Jose's not in a position really where they have a ton of cap space going forward. Under the projected cap, I think it's $5.5 million they have for next year. Now, on the upside, there are no pending unrestricted free agents of note. There's nobody that they're going to lose as an unrestricted free agent. It's a big deal. In terms of restricted free agents, there's Ferraro, there's Kakkonen, who are restricted free agents. If they sign both, you have to think that probably eats up most of the $5 million that's there. Ferraro's a very useful defenseman. You would think Kakkonen should be worth probably about $2 million. So again, that's going to get eaten up pretty quickly. And so that's the problem. And that's why we're going to hear during the offseason about which contract they're going to be trying to move and which player is going to get moved. And in the end, they're probably going to have to move somebody they don't want to if they want to get extra cap space. And then it might make it so their lineup gets kind of worse. So there's going to be a lot of discussion around the Sharks in the offseason, starting with the search for the general manager, going to the fact that there are some contracts on this team that are not aging well now and will not age any better as we go further forward. And so, yeah, I don't know that this team can necessarily turn things around. I think that there's, some reason for hope there. If it's Reimer and Kakkonen next year, is that good enough to get them into the playoffs or no? And I don't have the answer to that. And I'm not sure what they're going to do in the offseason. But the one question I have, the biggest question that I have is, can they continue to deny that a rebuild is necessary? As apparently they want to. Or it's like, nope, we want to get back to the playoffs now. The one thing that I do wonder, too, with them is that everybody's getting older. And they don't have the young guns coming up that you need in order to stay competitive. So whether they want to go into a rebuild or not, and this is something when I did the Chicago video, there were comments along the lines of, well, wait, they've been missing the playoffs for years. How are they not already in a rebuild? Because general managers do things different when they're in a rebuild. When they're in a rebuild, they're picking up more draft picks. They're not signing long-term big money extensions. They're letting veterans go as need be, and they're willing to get faster, younger, and probably go through some losing seasons first. And in the case of Chicago, as well as San Jose, they've done everything they can to resist that. And it is different. The result's the same. You are still seeing teams not in the playoffs and ending up with records that are very similar. But how they make up their rosters, how their roster projects, say, 4 or 5 years from now when you're looking at all the prospects and who they do or don't have, it's quite a different picture. And so for San Jose, is the picture one that maybe looks a little darker than it should, and maybe they can cobble together a playoff team next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding the San Jose Sharks. And is the Karlsson contract tradable? There are plenty of times we've said a player's not tradable, a contract's not tradable, that it is, and who would pick it up? Who would take it? Who would look at that Karlsson contract and say, hey, if you guys eat 25% of this, yeah, we'll take it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.